Good evening, everyone. I'm Diane Zahl, Director of Women's Philanthropy at the Milwaukee Jewish Federation. I want to quickly welcome you to our Women's Philanthropy Annual Gathering 2021. We are about to get started. Let's settle in. Everybody take a deep breath. Tonight's co-chairs, Lindy Liberman and Monica Arnstein, will be kicking off our event. Monica and Lindy are also vice chairs of our leadership committee. I'm so grateful for the work Monica and Lindy accomplish every day on behalf of Women's Philanthropy Federation and our community, and I am thankful they have dedicated their time and talent to leading this year's annual gathering. And now I will turn it over to Monica and Lindy.
Thank you, Diane. Welcome to this year's annual gathering. It is so great to see everyone. I am Lindy Liberman, and I'm so happy to be here with my dear friend and annual gathering co-chair, Monica Arnstein. Tonight is our time to come together as a community of caring Jewish women. It's a time to celebrate our work over the past year, to honor our leaders and our members, and to invest in ourselves through the amazing program Laurie Gottlieb has planned for us. We would, of course, rather be in person. I know we will get to see each other soon, and I know that first meeting, when we're all together again in person, will be among my most special moments with all of Women's Philanthropy. It's been a tricky year, but as a group, we have accomplished a great deal. Each of you, while dealing with your own personal trials, never lost sight of our Jewish community. You stayed by one another's side to ensure community members received the help and healing they needed. You'll learn more about our successes later. But please know how thankful Monica and I are for your enduring commitment. We have much to celebrate and much to look forward to in the year ahead. I know we will continue our work together with even more energy after tonight. In fact, the theme of our meeting tonight is moving forward together. Summer is upon us. We are starting to regain some freedom, some normalcy. Tonight is really a launching point for the tremendous work I know we'll accomplish together in the year ahead.
Yes, thank you, Lindy. More than anything, tonight I am excited. Excited about what the future holds and how together we can build upon the strength we developed this past year to be even more successful in all of our campaigns, educational opportunities, leadership development, and community involvement. We would also like to thank everyone who donated to the Fund for Jewish Milwaukee when they registered for our event tonight. We raised an additional $1,970. Now I want to share a quick overview of what to expect this evening. We will be starting this evening off with a special Devar Torah delivered by 6 members of the Women's Philanthropy Executive Board. We had the unique opportunity to study and work with Rabbi Hannah Wallach, who shared her time, knowledge, and insight with us in order to develop a collaborative Devar Torah, which you will hear in a minute. After the Devar, Miriam Rosensweig, President and CEO of the Federation, will talk with us. Then you will hear from Women's Philanthropy Director Diane Zahl and our Women's Philanthropy leadership. And finally, our featured speaker, Laurie Gottlieb, who we know you are all looking forward to hearing. I know Lindy and I can't wait. In the meantime, we hope most of you were able to pick up your Women's Philanthropy annual gathering gift boxes to help make this event a little sweeter and more memorable. We would like to give a huge shout out to Hannah Sattler for donating those adorable and delicious cookies from Hannah's Kitchen. Thank you so much, Hannah. Because we cannot meet in person, we want everyone in attendance to know who our amazing, dedicated Women's Philanthropy board members are. They are highlighted with a special Women's Philanthropy Zoom background. If some of you weren't able to get the background up, you are a star in our book with or without the background. And now it is my pleasure to turn things over to our Women's Philanthropy Executive Board to share their Devar Torah.
Thank you, Monica. I'm Becca Gorelnik. And Jody? I'm Becca Gorelnik, and my co-chair is Jody Sprinkman. She'll be speaking in a moment. We are the vice chairs of engagement for Women's Philanthropy. Women's Philanthropy is all about engaging women in meaningful opportunities. We would like to start by engaging you in the narrative of this week's Torah portion in the hopes that you will find your own way to connect to the teachings. This week's Torah portion, Balak, is named for a Moabite king who is afraid that the Israelites are so numerous they will overpower the Moabite people. The real focus of the portion is on Balaam, a sorcerer who Balak hires to curse the Israelites on his behalf. Balaam is a unique character in the Torah. Though not an Israelite himself, God speaks to him and tells him that he will not be able to carry out Balak's request. Balaam seems to request and listen to the Israelite God. Yet God eventually decides to let Balaam move ahead with his task on the condition that Balaam will only be able to speak the words that God puts in his mouth. Balaam then embarks on his mission following these divine conditions, and as such enters into the unknown with the understanding that he cannot control all that confronts him.
We at Women's Philanthropy emphasize with Balaam's position. This past year presented incredible challenges with many things out of our control. With these challenges came an incredible opportunity for growth. Often we do not allow ourselves to be pushed out of our comfort zone, and sometimes it's only when we're pushed out of our comfort zone that we are forced to allow ourselves opportunity for growth. The past 16 months have brought about many uncomfortable situations, leading us to look at situations differently and to discover new things about ourselves. Even 6 months ago, we could not have predicted where we would be at this moment, but as vice chairs of engagement, we are so proud that we faced the unknown together. We put our trust in one another and arrived at this moment stronger than we could have imagined possible.
I'm Jill Plavnik,
And I'm Carrie Steinberger.
Vice Chairs of Social Action for Women's Philanthropy. Balaam was called on to curse the Israelites, but in the end, God only allows him to bless the Israelites. When times are tough, we can be so quick to focus on the negative. But if we take the time to pause and reflect, and maybe even add a little kindness and empathy to the situation, we can bring forth blessings and positive change.
There are so many in need in this world. It can be overwhelming to know where and how to begin. Our Women's Philanthropy community has stepped up to help. In Women's Philanthropy, we have found a few opportunities to better the lives of women and families. With the help of Dignity Grows, an organization that will assist us in supplying women's hygiene kits, we will pack and donate 150 totes to those in need. We will also continue with the Adaptive Family Program for the holidays so that friends in our community have the opportunity to enjoy a more meaningful and joyous holiday season. And we have another program in the works to help provide school supplies for children in our community.
As Balaam continued on his quest, his trusted talking donkey stops in the middle of the journey as if prevented from moving forward. At first, Balaam assumes the worst, that she is deliberately preventing him from completing the task. Then God opens Balaam's eyes and he sees an angel with a sword in his path. The donkey was actually trying to protect him.
As leaders, we need to trust one another and work together to identify and overcome obstacles. If nothing else, this past year taught us how interconnected we all are and how much we need each other. As the donkey says to Balaam, "Have I ever held you up before on your journey?" She stopped only because she sees what Balaam cannot see. Sometimes leadership means listening to the perspectives of those around us. We are stronger when we move forward together.
Whether it's navigating the unknown, turning hard times into blessings, or working together, Women's Philanthropy is here for each other and for the community. Thank you for being here to show your support for our hard work and leadership. Now it's our honor to introduce an incredible leader in our community who embodies everything we learned from this week's tour portion and so much more. Milwaukee Jewish Federation President and CEO Miriam Rosensweig.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. I'm Miriam. I'm the president and CEO of the Milwaukee Jewish Federation, and I'm also a proud Lion of Judah since 2012. On behalf of my partner in all things Jewish community, our chair of the board, Moshe Katz, the board and officers of the Milwaukee Jewish Federation, and the whole team at MJF, Mazel Tov on an incredible year. Women's Philanthropy is a vital part of the Federation and the anchor of our philanthropy efforts. You are critical to our ability to care for the needs of the Jewish people and build a vibrant Jewish future in Milwaukee, Israel, and around the world. You can't have lived through this pandemic without appreciating the important role women have in our family life, in our workplace, and in the many areas of care needed during this time. as everything from healthcare to education, we're all overwhelmingly staffed by women. So thank you all for being here tonight and for being here every day for one another and for our community. You really do raise a village and then focus on repairing it in the toughest of times. What a year. As I said earlier, our mission states that we are tasked with taking care of the needs of the Jewish people and build a vibrant Jewish future in Milwaukee, Israel, and around the world. As the leader and convener of this Jewish community, the Federation took center stage in supporting our community and stewarding the people and places of Jewish Milwaukee when the pandemic began. We provided PPE. We secured well over $10 million in federal loans and grants for more than 40 local Jewish organizations. We made wellness calls together, thanks to many of you. We reached over 2,000 seniors. We conducted vaccines clinics and provided over 100 tons of kosher food. Now, when I say we, I mean you. We supported the work of our agencies. You carried it out, you led, you solicited, you helped make the decision to move this community forward. Yet in many ways, our work has just begun. We are moving full steam ahead to address complex community-wide challenges so we can emerge from this pandemic and respond to the needs. The pandemic, though it may not always seem it, is just one piece of our work. We as a community also have to focus on serving as a central source of communal leadership that identifies needs, raises funds, and invests resources. As part of this, over the last 6 months, we've been looking at overhauling and aligning our strategy. We looked at our mission and we said, what is our role? What is it that we really need to do? Can we strategically align our work, our mission, and our resources to achieve what this community needs? So we looked at our mission again. And by this point, I'm sure you want to say it. We have to take care of the needs of the Jewish people and build a vibrant Jewish future in Milwaukee, Israel, and around the world. Out of this process came 3 core pillars that we must use to direct our work. The first is that we are the Center for Jewish Philanthropy, and we need to ensure that not just our annual campaign, but the Jewish institutions are funded. The second one is that it is our role to lead the community during crisis and opportunity, and we are the only ones tasked at looking at the community not only from a 30,000 feet view, but looking 10 years ahead. And we are the only local agency that is tasked with caring for our overseas and Israel community. Now, we realized a great deal of success in these areas over the last year. As I mentioned, we've operated as the center of Jewish leadership throughout the pandemic, as well as the Center for Jewish Philanthropy. In this role, we raised almost $10 million through the annual campaign and the Fund for Jewish Milwaukee. Actually, I think as of this morning, it's over $10 million. Thanks in no small part to Women's Philanthropy. Some of it went to strengthen our agencies, allowing campaign programs to adjust to COVID rules, or synagogues to help them to adjust to the physical areas to address COVID restrictions. But our last call for grants highlighted another area, mental health. We are just emerging from the pandemic, hopefully, and the personal and social toll on individuals is just starting to be seen. That's why we've invested in mental health across.
Miriam, could you unmute yourself, please?
Sorry. Usually people ask me to mute myself, so I'm not used to this. Thank you to our staff, our lay leadership. We provided physical, emotional, and educational support to sustain Jewish Milwaukee. And now the Federation will continue to serve as a source of strength and guidance as we forge ahead. And thanks to our unwavering commitment to Israel, we increased our allocation to Jews in need globally, both last year and this year. And we're able to pivot when war broke out recently in Israel. In fact, I just returned from a solidarity mission with Moshe Katz, Joan Lubar, Kurt Janovitz, and Riza Colton. Our group was one of the first 20 groups to arrive since March 2020. And I have to say, being in Israel with our leadership when there are no tourists around, seeing Israel through the eyes of our chair, Moshe Katz, with our incoming chair, Joan Lubar, and with board members and future board members will sustain me for the rest of the year. Just as Federation was and is there for our local and global Jewish community, so too are the leaders and members of Women's Philanthropy. Our accomplishments this past year would not have been possible without your strong leadership. Women's Philanthropy President, Dr. Sharyl Paley. She had the responsibility of caring for patients in ways like never before. And that did not stop Cheryl's work leading our community in women's philanthropy. In fact, Cheryl was also regularly sharing information and advising Federation, the JCC, MJDS on how to care for our staff and volunteers. Cheryl has worked with several women's philanthropy professionals, and one area that has always impressed me is that however busy Cheryl is, she will still send me a note on how to best support a team member, how to best support the program, or how to move our agenda forward. Thank you, Cheryl, for all you have done, and I look forward to spending some time with you now that we are indoors and outdoors. Similarly, the other Cheryl with a C, who was extremely busy professionally caring for our young community members and often jumped off of our weekly campaign calls to go see a family in great need. She still continued to lead women's philanthropy by fundraising at a time it was more important than ever. Cheryl was on every fundraising call this year and shaped our structure to ensure a strong campaign. And now Cheryl is stepping into her new role as president of Women's Philanthropy. Cheryl, thank you for your outstanding fundraising work. We are so thankful you will be continuing and building upon Women's Philanthropy's legacy. And thank you for letting Mitch come to lead our federation. This is a real family project. I have to also recognize Sara Hermanoff, Women's Philanthropy's incoming campaign chair. Everything the Federation accomplished this past year was made possible by the committee that Sara led. In her role as both as the Community Planning and Allocations Committee Chair, and she also co-chaired our crisis response team. There are very few people who are as immersed in the needs of the community as Sara, and I know that she will be an outstanding campaign chair because she could really tell our story. Women's Philanthropy was and is in the most capable of hands. Thank you, Cheryl, other Cheryl, and Sara for all you've done and for all you will surely do. I also must mention that our incoming chair of the board, Joan Lubar, our VP of Philanthropy, and our CEO are all women. What a federation. Can't always say that. Right alongside them are all of you. Thank you for supporting this community when you had so much on your plates. There was so much work to be done, but you give me the hope and support necessary to know that we can successfully move forward. I want to officially welcome Diane Zahl, who joined our team during a pandemic in a transition. She's been with us for just 4 months, but she has contributed to the Federation for much longer as a lay leader. I'm also so grateful for Robin Aronson for continuing to guide women's philanthropy and for helping Diane to quickly step into her new role. Many thanks to Robin, Diane, and the whole team at Milwaukee Jewish Federation for leading women's philanthropy. I would now like to turn it over to Women's Philanthropy Director, Diane Zahl.
Thank you, Miriam, and thank you for being here with us tonight. Our community is fortunate to have Miriam at the helm. Miriam, your vision, passion, and tireless commitment are astounding, and your choice of partners, top-notch. We are beyond lucky to have Moshe Katz as our board chair just when we needed him. He is always able to identify just what our community needs and just what we need to do it, to make it happen. His messages always have an underlying Jewish teaching, and even during these different times, no matter if he's giving us good news or not such good news, he always manages to leave us with a warm feeling in our heart and a smile on our face. Thank you, Moshe, for always being just what we need. And just as Moshe is leaving, Joan Lubar is coming in as Milwaukee Jewish Federation's new board chair. Her dedication to this community is undeniable, and Joan has a way of always filling a meeting or a room with hope. We are very lucky to have Joan joining Miriam at the helm. This year, the needs were greater than ever, and Milwaukee Jewish Federation was able to raise even more money than last year. The Federation's annual campaign chair, Judy Corin, played an integral part. Judy has been a rock star of a campaign chair. She tells a compelling story, always from the heart, and goes in for the big ask. She is hard to say no to. Thank you, Moshe, Joan, and Judy. Your contributions are recognized and deeply appreciated. As Miriam mentioned, I am new to my role as director, but not new to Federation. I grew up in this community. I had great role models in my mother and grandmothers. Philanthropy and the power of women's voices were always important to them, and therefore have always been a part of my life. And I hope I've passed these values down to my children. Some of them are actually listening. I began with women's philanthropy as a lay leader. I love the lifelong friendships and knowing my commitment makes a difference. For many years as a lay leader, I watched and learned about the strength that our Milwaukee community is built on and our community's abundance of commitment and dedication. It's easy to get through most times, but a community's strength really shines through when faced with challenging times. I've never been prouder of our community or prouder to be part of it. I have watched everyone step up and come together during these unprecedented times. We know these past 16 months have been filled with many difficult moments that I'm sure we would like to put behind us. During this time, there have also been moments I am thankful for. I was fortunate to have my young adult, children home together for over 5 months. This would never have happened during typical times at the ages and stages they are at. It allowed for many moments that our family will treasure. I am honored now to be on the professional side. I have had the privilege to watch and work with so many amazing people in this community who have all stepped up to help Milwaukee Jewish Federation make an impact. Not only were we able to make a noticeable financial impact, but we also made an emotional impact. We are an established entity that people in this community can trust and count on. In my role as Women's Philanthropy Director, I am very fortunate to partner with so many amazing women. There aren't even enough words to express the admiration and gratitude this community and I have for these two amazing women, but words are all we have. Sharyl Paley and Cheryl Moser, thank you for your leadership, insight, judgment, and dedication, and of course, your friendship. You have set a terrific course for women's philanthropy. We are a powerhouse in this community. Thanks to you. Sharyl Paley, you have led us with never-ending vision, energy, and compassion. Your judgment and insight are admirable, and you always manage to spread a warmth among us that does not go unnoticed, with or without wine or chocolate. Sharyl Paley, I know you will stay involved. For one thing, we won't let you go far, and we know how to find you, but mostly because we know Federation in this community live deep inside you. Thank you for all you've done. Cheryl Moser, you have led the Women's Philanthropy campaign by excellent example. Your stories are compelling and speak of opportunity and are filled with compassion and the desire to help. I feel so grateful that you will be moving in as Women's Philanthropy's newest president and lucky to be continuing this journey together as you create your own legacy as president. And I also could not be more excited to welcome Sara Hermanoff as Women's Philanthropy's new campaign chair. Sara has a deep understanding of the community and its values. She is compassionate and strongly believes that every dollar counts and every dollar matters to our donors. Women's Philanthropy and this community are fortunate to have such a phenomenal new campaign leader in place. I'm also very grateful to our Women's Philanthropy board and our committee members. You are the ones who lead our work and make it happen. Without all your ideas, imagination, and insight, we wouldn't be where we are today. And of course, none of us could have gotten here without the tireless efforts of Women's Philanthropy's Associate Director, Robin Aronson. Thank you, Robin, for welcoming me, helping me quickly get up to speed, and keeping us all going, and of course, friendship. It is a unique time to begin working at the Milwaukee Jewish Federation, but there's certainly no better or no more rewarding time. It's been a tricky year, and we not only got through it, but we made a difference. Getting to this point was not easy for anyone, and it was even harder for some. Our Women's Philanthropy community stepped up, and we were able to get where we are now because we got there together. I know that we will continue to be a strong, compassionate, and influential group in our community. More than anything tonight, I want you to leave with a renewed hope as we move forward together. Women's Philanthropy will continue to be a strong part of Milwaukee Jewish Federation, care for the needs of this Jewish community, and build a vibrant Jewish future in Milwaukee, Israel, and around the world. Again, thank you all for being here tonight. Your presence sends a powerful statement. Though we aren't together in one room, we are together in spirit. We are united by our love for the Milwaukee Jewish community and our commitment to ensuring its vitality. And now it is my honor to welcome Women's Philanthropy President, Sharyl Paley.
Thank you, Diane, for your really kind words, and Miriam for your kind words. This is the time, everybody just take a breath, take a drink of your wine. I know there's lots of us talking, but we're women and we all have a lot to say. I will try to talk quickly, but I really want to have my say. And I really wanted us to be in person this year. So since we can't, I want you to all imagine that we are at the art museum, looking out at the ocean, at the lake, and picturing us all together and pretending that we're at a podium. So I'm actually going to speak using my paper this time. Do not follow where the path may lead. Go instead where there is no path and leave a trail, said by poet Muriel Strode. Many times over the past year, it felt like we were doing just that. This year was like no other. It often felt like we were going down new trails, searching for our way. We never got lost though, because those before us left a trail and showed us what we needed to do and where we needed to go. 3 years ago, when Cheryl and I started our journey together as Women's Philanthropy President and Women's Philanthropy Campaign Chair, we sat down and listened to our community to hear what was important to you. Our past leaders helped us and reminded us that in order to move forward, we needed to be relevant today. Part of this was listening to learn how to stay relevant, and part was a necessity to help our new staff learn what women's philanthropy means to the women of our community. You see, in our 3 years, we worked with 6 different staff, from Amy Blumenthal to Karen Goldberg and Ellen Schneiderman to Donna Margolis, then Julie Schack, until Diane Zahl began this winter. Each had a strong desire to help guide us in leading the women of our community. Many times we paused or slowed down on our trail to make sure we didn't get lost. With each new staff, we wanted to share our roots because that is what grounds us in who we are today. Our discussions through the past few years brought forth the same themes. As women, we care. As a group, we want to engage with other women. We want to educate ourselves and others about what the Milwaukee Federation does for our community. And we want to be givers of our money, our time, and of ourselves. Joan Lubar shared with us several years ago, when we changed our name from Women's Division to Women's Philanthropy, what philanthropy actually means. It means the love of mankind. Well, maybe womankind. This truly is the basis of what we do. We do because of our love for our women's philanthropy community, our Milwaukee Jewish community, our Israel community, and the community of all the Jews around the world. The rest of my speech should be about what we did this year, and thank you to everyone who helped. I should tell you about how we developed a new board plan that gave us more of a structure to the board and would hopefully allow everyone to feel they had a definitive role to play. Or the meaningful meetings that our social action and engagement committees held in the fall to brainstorm ideas. Or how we were able to continue our annual programs like our Lion Pomegranate Luncheon and Edie Edelman event, gathering over Zoom to still be together and engaging with our amazing speakers. I should also share with you our amazing Adopt a Family holiday program, where women throughout our community were able to ensure that 150 JFS families had presents for themselves and their loved ones over the holiday season. And we continued the holiday theme with our Michael Salmanoff Pesach event. How about all the National Women's Philanthropy programs that we were able to be part of this year? From the monthly book club to the International Lion of Judah conference to Heart, a virtual mission, which brought us a little bit closer to Israel. All who wanted were able to engage. And of course, all the work our development committee has accomplished, which Cheryl will share later. And finally, our friendly outreach caller program, where along with JFS, we reached out to seniors in our community to be a friendly voice and to see if they needed assistance of any kind. So yes, this should be all about the great programs and all the chairs and people who help put them together. But this year was about so much more. This year was and is about women coming together to be there for each other, for our community, and selfishly, I say even for me. I could not have done this year without the support and power of all the women behind me. What many of you do not know is that one of my biggest fears has always been a pandemic. I know I'll have to talk with Laurie about this after the meeting. How can a pediatrician fear a pandemic? Infectious disease is a large part of what I do every day. It is knowing what it could entail and the fear of how hard it would be on the world. And yet we went on. Laurie Gottlieb states in her book, which you will hear about later, we are mirrors, reflecting mirrors, reflecting mirrors, showing one another what we can't see yet. Depending on the angle, the surroundings, and the lighting, you will get a different image every time you look in the mirror. You were the mirrors I looked to throughout the year, reflecting to me which direction to go. The reflection would change depending on time and circumstance, and yet it always led forward. While we were not able to plan every program we wanted or see each other in person, this year was about being there for each other in our community. From helping with the Jewish Fund for Milwaukee, to doing our outreach calls, to just being there for each other. I would say this was a successful year. And so it is important to say thank you. Thank you to our vice chairs, Monica, Lindy, Becca, Jody, Jill, and Carrie. Thank you for your passion and your direction. Thank you for being an example and working on the Devar Torah together. Thank you for pushing us throughout the year. Thank you to all of our board members who took this journey with us. It was not the year we expected, and please know that your work and all the discussions we had are so valued and have laid the foundation of what is to come. We heard every word you said, wrote down every idea, and are going to come back to you in the next few months to put it all together. Robin, you are the glue that kept us together this year. Thank you for always asking the question, for your organization, and for finding your passion in women's philanthropy and spreading it to others. Miriam, Julie, Moshe, and Judy, thank you for your support and always being there to guide and to just listen. I am not always the most demonstrative person, so I want you to know how much it truly meant when you were there to listen. Diane, wow, you came in and we just kept moving. You jumped right in to plan 2 major events and our board meeting. Unbelievable. It can be difficult working with staff. It could be difficult working with staff who is a friend, and you made it so easy. Keep guiding us, and women's philanthropy will soar. Cheryl, no words. You were my rock and stabilizer. You knew when I was spent and helped pick me up when my energy was waning. You can take my passion and craziness and turn it into something tangible. You and Sara have amazing women to work with, and as you become president and campaign chair, and you know I'm always here. I may run and hide some days from the world, but you always know where to find me. I'm excited to watch what the board puts together next year. Speaking of moving forward, there are amazing things about to happen. In the coming year, Women's Philanthropy will offer more opportunities to help fulfill our mission of caring for the needs of the Jewish people. In continuing with the theme of our Adopt a Family program, later this summer, we'll bring the Dignity Grows program to Milwaukee with hopefully our first in-person volunteer event in August. Dignity Grows supports local women by empowering them with personal hygiene kits they wouldn't be able to afford otherwise. We're also planning a school supply drive for local students later in the year. More information on these programs and how to participate will be available soon. Once again, it was the passion of the women on the board that brought these programs to fruition, and we hope all women in the community who want to participate will do so. And finally, my family. My parents encouraged me at a young age to be involved and make a difference. Bobby and I, our parents, our grandparents, and especially our children have benefited from so many parts of the Jewish community, and we just want to do our part. I couldn't do this without them. Not only do they not complain when I have another meeting or program to go to, they now join me. Thank you, Hannah, for joining tonight from Camp Interlaken, where you're helping keep the kids safe and happy. They are my community, and I love them. Even my husband's in the room listening to this. Hi. So this is where I go off for a little bit. I was hoping to give Cheryl something tonight, but when they told me it would ship in 24 to 48 hours, that was after the week where they had to make it. I am a strong and proud lion, but it is the pomegranate that has always spoken to me. The pomegranate is a symbol of woman, of mitzvot, of being fruitful. And so I hope that she will enjoy. I'm trying to find an image and maybe I can hold it up. It's an image. Look, it's very lovely. I hope you enjoy it, and I'm so sorry it is not here tonight.
That's okay.
So with that, I thank you to all of you, and I turn it over to Cheryl, who will continue to lead you forward. Yay. I'm done.
Thank you, everyone, for all of the kind words so far tonight. Cheryl, we're not done singing your praises yet. Thank you for your leadership these past 3 years. We were challenged by staff changes in the pandemic, but you were determined to keep women's philanthropy moving forward and to ensure it remained a vital part of the Milwaukee Jewish community. We worked on a shared vision that you made sure was put in place before moving on, and for that I am grateful. I look forward to moving into the role of Women's Philanthropy President and furthering our vision with the guidance of our executive committee and the Women's Philanthropy staff, Diane and Robin. These gifts were picked out with gratitude and appreciation for all you have accomplished as Women's Philanthropy President. And no, they have nothing to do with wine, chocolate, or ice cream. Before I assume my new role in Women's Philanthropy, I first want to officially wrap up my position as Women's Philanthropy Campaign Chair. Despite the challenges of the past year, I am still ending my tenure on a high note, thanks to all of you. What a gift it is to know our community of Jewish women could be a source of strength, no matter what the world cast our way. I want to thank all of our campaign volunteers who helped make our goals a reality. It's such an inspiration to see how you all showed up, learned, asked questions, and were open to new ways of thinking and doing. We all had a role in our campaign this year. We were ambassadors, influencers, door openers, gift closers, and most importantly, donors. There are many highlights from the past year. I want to share some of the most meaningful ones with you tonight. Together, our community campaign has raised almost $7.2 million. Women's Philanthropy has raised $1.7 million from 865 gifts, with a 9.32% card-for-card increase over last year. We have welcomed 20 new lions to our pride and 25 new pomegranates. Thank you to our development committee for all of your work and support this year. It's been an honor to be an active member of the FRD team. Thank you, Julie Shack, Federation's Vice President of Development, and Judy Corin, Federation's Annual Campaign Chair. Thank you, Laurie Roth, who served as Women's Philanthropy's Loesch Chair. Loesch gifts leave a lasting legacy to benefit our Jewish community. I'm hopeful for what the future holds as Sara moves into the leadership role of Women's Philanthropy Campaign Chair. She brings with her a wealth of knowledge about the allocations process and experience from the time she has served as Community Planning and Allocations Committee Chair and as co-chair of the Crisis Response Team. Sara, I'm looking forward to continuing this journey together. Finally, I want to thank you all in advance for your partnership in the year ahead. Each member we have volunteering, participating, and sharing their resources exponentially grows the strength of this amazing group. I'm excited to move forward together as one cohesive team of powerful women to make a profound impact on this Jewish community. It's time to welcome an emerging leader of women's philanthropy in our Milwaukee community, Jody Sprinkman, who you met earlier during the Devar Torah, is vice chair of our engagement committee. Jody is also the most recent recipient of our Ann Agolnik Young Leadership Award, which recognizes young women in the community who have demonstrated outstanding leadership, a deep awareness of the commitment to the challenges of the Jewish communal life, and a dedication to ensuring the continuity of the Jewish people. Jody has accomplished much on behalf of our Jewish and broader communities. We're thankful to have her as a leader and to have her introduce tonight's featured speaker. Jody.
Thank you, Cheryl. It is an honor for me to introduce tonight's very special guest, Laurie Gottlieb. Laurie is a psychotherapist and author of the New York Times bestseller, Maybe You Should Talk to Someone, which has sold over 1 million copies and is being adapted as a television series. In addition to her clinical practice, Laurie writes the Atlantic's weekly Dear Therapist advice column and is co-host of the popular Dear Therapist podcast produced by Katie Couric. She is a sought-after expert by top media such as The Today Show, Good Morning America, CBS This Morning, CNN, and NPR's Fresh Air. Not surprisingly, Laurie's recent TED Talk was one of the top 10 most watched of the year. You can learn more about Laurie at lauriegottlieb.com. Also, be sure to follow her on Twitter at lauriegottlieb1 and Instagram at lauriegottlieb_author. Please note that tonight's co-chairs, Monica and Lindy, will be monitoring questions and answers throughout Laurie's talk. Now, please help me in welcoming Laurie Gottlieb along with Monica and Lindy.
Hi
there.
Hi, Laurie. Welcome. Thank you.
Thank
All
you.
right. We're just going to get started because we want to talk to you. we know we should. Okay. So first question. You say at the beginning of the book that you're not just a therapist, you're a card-carrying member of the human race. Why did you choose to include yourself in such a revealing way in the book? And were you afraid to be so vulnerable given that your patients might read it?
Yeah, so, I never set out to write a book about therapy in the way that I wrote Maybe You Should Talk to Someone. And I certainly never set out to write a book about me in therapy. But what happened was, if you read the book, you know that I was originally supposed to be writing a book about happiness. And the book about happiness was depressing me. I always called it the miserable, depression-inducing happiness book, because I felt like it really didn't reflect what I was seeing in the therapy room. And what I was seeing in the therapy room was the human condition, I think in all of its beauty. And I wanted people who don't have the privilege of doing what I do every day to be able to see that and to see themselves reflected in that. And so originally I canceled the happiness book and I was going to write about some of my patients and bring people into the room. So Maybe You Should Talk to Someone follows the lives of 4 very seemingly different patients who then we see have a lot in common underneath it all. And then there's a 5th patient in the book, which is me, as I go through my own therapy. And I say, at the beginning of the book that I really wanted to show that we're all more the same than we are different. And I didn't think that anyone I knew would be reading the book. So there was part of the unself-consciousness was when I canceled the happiness book, everyone said, oh, no one's going to read this book about people talking in a therapy room. And, now over 1 million copies later, they were wrong. And I'm really glad I didn't know how many people were going to read it, because I think I would have maybe edited myself a little bit. And in the book, I'm extremely vulnerable. And I think that's why so many people are relating to it, because it is so honest.
Awesome. So people come to therapy to make changes in their lives, but changing is really hard. Why is it so hard for us to change, even when the changes are good for us?
The thing about change that's tricky is that even when we're making positive changes, we are giving something up. We're giving up the thing that we know. We're giving up the familiar. So even though the familiar may not be all that great, and that's why we want to change, at least it's the devil you know. And the other thing about change is that it doesn't happen the way that Nike says it does, like just do it. This is why New Year's resolutions tend to fail, because there are these stages of change. There's a chapter in the book called How Humans Change, and it goes through the various stages of pre-contemplation. You don't even know you're thinking about changing, to contemplation, where you're thinking about it, but you're not ready to do it, to preparation, where you're preparing, to action, where you do it. But the most important stage of change is maintenance, which is how do we maintain the change once we've made it? And built into that stage is that we are going to slip back. It's not a linear progression. And people feel like the minute that they go back to the old way, that they have failed in some way, and they haven't. That's just part of the process. And so then they just say, oh, well, that didn't work, so forget it, I'm not going to change. And I really hope that people will, when they read the book, pay attention to the maintenance phase, because that's really the phase in which you have to have a lot of self-compassion, and you have to just know that, you're human, and you just get back on track the next day.
Great, thank you. Why does it help to work through relationship patterns with someone other than your close friends? So tell us the difference between idiot compassion and wise compassion.
I think so many times when something happens, we call our friends and we say, listen to what happened with my partner, my boss, my child, my mother, my, whomever, my sibling, whatever it might be. And they say, oh yeah, you're right. I can't believe that. I can't believe they did that. And so the whole idea is that we feel incredibly validated in that moment, but we're not really learning anything about our own role in the situation, or even what we could do differently next time. It's kind of like if a fight breaks out in every bar you're going to, maybe it's you. We don't say that to our friends in idiot compassion. We're just like there to support them, but we're not really doing what a therapist does. And the therapist offers wise compassion, which is we hold up a mirror to you and we help you to see something about yourself that maybe you haven't been willing or able to. And that's where the growth and the change come from. So maybe it's doing something differently in terms of not having that dynamic happen, or maybe that person's going to do that thing, but you are going to have a different response. And so, when you just get told all the time, yeah, you're right, that's terrible, you don't really learn anything and nothing changes.
That's a really good point.
Yeah.
What do you think is the hardest thing for people to do right in relationships?
That's a good question. So many things, but I would say one of the hardest things is listening. I think that people want to listen, but they don't know how to listen. And, I think that people want something different from a conversation too. So I think often when we're listening to someone, we assume that what we would want in that moment is what they want. And so sometimes, like what they want is they just want to vent, and we would want someone to help us solve the problem, or they just want a hug, or, whatever it is that they want. And so it helps at the beginning of a conversation to say to somebody, how can I be helpful to you right now in this conversation? And they'll tell you what they want in that conversation, and it will go so much better. And maybe in a different conversation about the same topic, they may want you to help problem solve, or they may want you to, hear what their ideas are, whatever it is. But you have to ask to know. And I think so many people get into conflict because they feel like, you don't hear me, you're not listening to me. And it's just a matter of knowing, how does somebody want to be heard?
Oh, yeah.
I should say too, I think we do this with our kids, where, our kids come to us with things and they say, like, here's what happened. And we say, well, here's what you should do about it. And I think instead or they're sad and we say, oh, don't be sad about that. Hey, let's go have a frozen yogurt, right? We're not really like letting them sit with their feelings, or I'm so worried about this. And we say, oh, don't worry about that. Don't be scared about that. And we try to sort of talk them out of their feelings, because their discomfort makes us feel uncomfortable. And we need to be able to sit with their discomfort and our own discomfort about their discomfort to really help them, so that they know that you don't have to get rid of every feeling you have. In fact, your feelings are useful. They're like a compass. They tell you what you need. They tell you what direction to go in. And so if we can say 3 words to our kids, which are, tell me more. So they come to you and they say something and you just say, oh, say more about that, or interesting, or tell me more. They are so smart. They have the solutions inside of them. They need a guide there, but not somebody to do the problem solving for them.
Good point.
Awesome. Laurie, how much more time do we have?
About 10 minutes.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so a couple more questions. What are some differences between how men and women talk about their issues in therapy, and what can that teach us about vulnerability in our own relationships?
So these are gross generalizations, but I can say over time, this is a pattern that I've seen, is that men feel like they really can't talk about their emotional worlds at all. So when men come into therapy, often at some point they will say something to me like, I've never told anyone this before. And then what they tell me feels so mild to me. I feel like in the back of my head, I'm thinking, really? Like, you haven't told anyone that? Because men really feel like, and this is even if they have like a great marriage and supportive friends and family, they truly feel like they can't do it. Women will come in and they will say, I've never told anyone this before. And then they say, except for my mother or my sister or my best friend. So they've told like 1, 2, 3 people, but they feel like they haven't told anyone. And what they say is also at a much deeper level, not because they're deeper than men, but because they've had permission to go to that place with other people. Men are just, have the same kinds of problems and issues about, all the questions that we have as women. And so I see that in couples therapy too, where, if it's a heterosexual couple, I'll see like, the woman will often say to the man in some form or another, I really feel like we're not really connecting. There's this distance between us. I want to know what's going on in your inner world. I want you to share your life with me. I want you to share your feelings with me. And so then he does, and maybe he cries, and maybe he cries a lot. And inevitably, she will look at me like a deer in headlights, like, what do I do with this? Because she's so profoundly uncomfortable. And it's because it's kind of like, what comes out is I don't feel safe when you don't share with me, but I don't feel safe when you are crying like this or really opening up to me either. And so that's the culture, right? That's like the message that we give men is so confusing around their feelings. And so I think that what we have to do is we have to make sure that we aren't sending that message either explicitly or implicitly, that if we do want to have equality in terms of, we want to be equally emotionally open with each other, we have to create the space for that.
Makes sense. You come to therapy after an unexpected breakup, or at least that's what you say to your therapist. You talk a lot in your book and in your TED Talk about how we're unreliable narrators of our own lives. What are the stories we tell ourselves about our lives that get in our way?
So it's true, we are unreliable narrators of our own lives. And by that, I don't mean that we're dishonest. What I mean is that we see the world through our particular lens. And often when people come to therapy, I know that I'm hearing a version of a story. I'm hearing the story through the lens that they have viewed it. And I know that, they're exaggerating certain parts of the story, meaning they're maximizing them. They're saying a lot more about that part of the story, or they're leaving out entire parts of the story, or maybe they're talking about a disagreement and they're not talking about something that maybe they're ashamed of in terms of how they behaved in that particular interaction. But also we just miss things. We just assume other people's motivations, and generally we are incorrect. We don't really know why somebody said something or did something. And then we have these other stories that are running in the background. Like maybe your story is I'm unlovable. And so whenever somebody does something, it plays into that story for you, or I can't trust anyone, or nothing will ever work out for me. Whatever your story is that is running in the background, that's the lens through which you're going to view everything that happens to you on a daily basis. And so I feel like therapy in a lot of ways is an editing process. It's taking a look at the stories that we carry around and saying, what is a real story? What is an accurate story? What is an old story that isn't accurate or no longer is accurate? And how can we make sure that we're seeing the world through a different lens that is more helpful to us and the people around us?
Wonderful. Okay, our final question. What is one concrete thing we can do right now to improve our emotional well-being, Laurie?
I think one of the things that we learned in the past year is how important it is to have compassion for other people. But I don't know if we learned that we need to have compassion for ourselves. And so I would say it's really about giving ourselves permission to be kind to ourselves. Before COVID, when I used to be in person and on stages, I would say to people, who is the person that you talk to most in the course of your life? Show of hands. Is it your partner? Lots of hands. Is it your sibling? Is it your parent? Who is it? And is it your best friend? But the person that we talk to most in the course of our lives is ourselves. And what we say to ourselves isn't always kind or true or useful. And so I had a therapy patient who was so self-critical and she just didn't see it. And I said to her, listen, I want you to go home and I want you to really listen to that voice in your head. And I want you to write down everything that it says to you in the course of a few days and come back next week and we'll talk about it. So she comes back the next week. She had written everything down. She starts to read it. And she starts crying and she says, I can't even read this. I am such a bully to myself. I had no idea how unkind I am to myself. And they would be things like she was typing an email and she made a mistake and she said to herself, you're so stupid. You know, just a little comment in her head to herself. Or she caught a reflection in a mirror and she said, oh, you look terrible today. You know, just these little things, these little ways that we talk to ourselves that we don't even notice. And so I think that the one thing that we can all do that would really change just the environment in which we are, you know, the emotional environment that we walk around with is how can we be kinder to ourselves, and to ask ourselves that question, is it kind? Is it true? And is it useful? And if it's not, maybe we need to talk to ourselves a little bit differently.
Beautiful.
Wow, Laurie, thank you so much. That was extremely enlightening. You are amazing. And I've had your book on my nightstand for months and finally have been reading it, and it's really, really wonderful. Thank you for being with us tonight. We so appreciate your knowledge, your relevance to our lives today, your openness to sharing with us. You truly made this annual gathering a really spectacular experience and a really meaningful one as well.
Oh, well, thank you so much for having me join. It was such a pleasure to hear about everything that your community did during this time. And thank you for including me in this tonight.
Yeah. And if you want to give any updates on what you're up to now, so we can continue to hear from you.
Sure. Yeah. So I have a podcast. It's called Dear Therapists. And I do it with a colleague, Guy Winch, and we basically do therapy sessions. And so if you're curious at all, if the book piqued your curiosity about what do these sessions actually sound like, instead of just reading them, somebody comes on, they have, you know, sort of an everyday problem that they write in about, and we do a therapy session with them. And then the part that I love is that at the end of it, we give them concrete, actionable advice. They have a homework assignment that they have 1 week to do. And then they come back and they tell us how it went. Because people always say, okay, well, that was the therapy session and that was really interesting. And it seemed like they made so much progress, but what's going to happen afterward? And so we hear what happens afterward. And then we are just about to launch season 2 on July 20th. So if you missed season 1 of Dear Therapist, you can listen to it wherever you listen to your podcast. And then catch up on season 1. And then in season 2, we have all new sessions to bring to you. And we have Where Are They Now episodes, which shows we bring back the people from season 1 to find out what happened a year later in their lives. And for anybody who has ever wondered, what does talk therapy do, or how can it really help? I really highly suggest listening to the Dear Therapist podcast. Also, because even if you don't share that specific issue, you will hear something that will relate to your own life in there. And basically you've gotten a free therapy session.
Awesome. Well, if you're looking for volunteers.
Well, people can write in to Laurie and Guy at iHeartMedia.com if they want to write in for
Awesome.
season 1.
Thank you. Thank you, Laurie.
My pleasure.
Lindy and I also just want to thank all of you who joined us for our 2021 Women's Philanthropy Annual Gathering. Thank you for being here tonight. Thank you for being an amazing group of women. Thank you for contributing in the many different ways throughout this past year. We are now even more excited for the year ahead. As we wrap up, we encourage you to type into the chat something that you're looking forward to this summer. Now enjoy your summer, and we will see you hopefully in person very soon. Thank you.
Thanks.